date for the first session of FEED 2024. Before we start with the session, I want all of you to just give a round of applause for yourselves for being here today and being a part of an important conversation. Our first session is called Doubling Energy Efficiency Progress, Global Insights, Local Implications. This session will delve into international cooperation around energy efficiency in light of some recent developments and their implications on India. This session will also bring to the fore AEEE's latest recommendations around operationalizing some of the high-impact energy efficiency opportunities identified during the G20 presidency. We have a distinguished panel of experts with us today who will share their insights and experiences. I request you to please come up on the stage as I call your name. Mr. Saurabh Kumar, CEO, Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. Mr. Kumar has served the UN on deputation handling environmental issues in the Asia-Pacific region. He has been with the Union Ministry of Power for about 15 years and has been leading ESL in successfully implementing energy efficiency projects such as Ujala, SNLP, and more. Mr. Arijit Sen Gupta, Director, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Mr. Arijit Sen Gupta has been with the Ministry of Power and Government of India. In this role, he was responsible for international cooperation, demand-side management, financing of energy efficiency initiatives, planning, and statistics. Apart from this, he's also responsible for coordinating with other ministries on technical matters. He has an overall experience of about 17 years. Dr. Ritu Mathur, Consultant, Niti Aayog. Dr. Mathur is a public policy and government affairs professional with 30 years of industry experience and significant accomplishments. Her expertise lies in successfully coordinating with government and regulatory agencies, industry associations, and foreign partners. She also has extensive experience in strategic multiple stakeholder partnerships and relationship management. Mr. Bishal Thapa, Senior Director, India, CLASP. With 22 years of global experience, Mr. Bishal Thapa has collaborated with a diverse array of public and private sector partners in the realms of energy, climate, and energy efficiency. His expertise lies in crafting, developing, and executing multidimensional energy sector projects in collaborations with governments, development agencies, and private sector entities. Mr. Anish De. Mr. Anish has experience of over 25 years in the energy sector consulting. As a renowned power sector expert, he has undertaken pioneering work in sector reform and restructuring, designing sectorial policy and regulatory frameworks. Mr. Venkat Garimela, Vice President, Sustainability and Strategic Transformation, Schneider Electric. Mr. Venkat is a prolific business leader with over 25 years of experience in running and managing businesses across domains of energy efficiency and digitalization. Currently, he's leading sustainability and strategic transformations for Schneider Electric and chairing the EC at AEEE with a strong passion and enthusiasm for energy efficiency and its possibilities. Now, I would like to call upon the chair for this session, Dr. Satish Kumar, President and Executive Director, AEEE. He's a professional committed to impactful, sustainable energy transition through triple sector leadership. Prior to AEEE, he was the Energy Efficiency Ambassador and led the energy management business at Schneider Electric, India. Before we get on with the panel discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Akash Goenka for a presentation on doubling global energy efficiency progress, how the G20 can lead the way. Mr. Akash is a clean energy transition professional specializing in India's energy efficiency policies and their nexus with climate change. His expertise lies in climate-friendly cooling, national cooling action plans, and building sector energy data. He holds a master's in sustainable energy from Imperial College London, complementing his background as a mechanical engineer.
Thank you, Kashish. I feel truly privileged to be in such august company. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a very short presentation on the report which was launched just before the tea break. And just to let you know that this report draws upon extensively from secondary literature, numerous expert consultations, and rigorous peer reviews by global energy efficiency luminaries. It unveils insights from best practices, distills transferable learnings for G20 countries, and makes actionable recommendations. The goal of the report is to contribute to the realization of the global target of doubling energy efficiency progress by 2030, reflecting the spirit of collaborative determination in the G20. This report is a deep dive into 3 of the 5 high-impact energy efficiency opportunities outlined in the strategic plan for advancing energy efficiency across demand sectors by 2030 that our DG Bureau of Energy Efficiency spoke about in his keynote. And this was, of course, developed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in association with AAA, SE4All, and IEA during India's G20 presidency last year. These opportunities also have very strong linkages with the voluntary action plan on doubling the global rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030, also developed during India's G20 presidency. Through the next few slides, I will be going through 3 of these high-impact opportunity areas before I hand over to the panel for a discussion. The first is around closing the gap between building energy code development and implementation. I think all of us here are aware that building energy codes have emerged as a common, pervasive regulatory measure adopted by most G20 countries to avoid locking in the energy and carbon associated with inefficient construction and unlocking a powerful compounding effect that minimizes the energy and carbon intensity of the building sector. As you see on the slide on the map, some countries have also expanded the scope of the codes and added more complexities in their endeavor towards net zero buildings. Additionally, embodied carbon considerations are gaining importance in building codes to limit emissions associated with materials and construction processes. And the shining example here really is the EU's Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, EPBD, which was recast recently, and that includes mandatory disclosure of embodied carbon for new building construction. However, at the same time, various studies have shown that savings from energy codes hinge significantly on robust enforcement mechanisms and high compliance rates. And unfortunately, there is a massive gulf between the quality and stringency of building energy codes between their development and their implementation. This report explores diverse enforcement mechanisms for building energy codes in the G20 countries, including the type of enforcement, whether it is through local governance or through third-party assessors or a combination of the two, on-site inspections, energy performance certificates, penalties and incentives, simulations, etc. And due to the paucity of time, I will not be able to get into those details, but in summary, the implementation of building energy codes as a process involves a variety of stakeholders interacting with each other at various stages of building construction. And their implementation process must be thought with a systems thinking approach as followed by a few G20 countries. This essentially means streamlining the enforcement and compliance process and exploring systemic barriers that hinder compliance at different stages. Once these barriers are identified, they can be addressed using technology and effective communication. I do wish to take this opportunity to seed in the idea of building performance standards. AEEE strongly believes that to ensure energy efficiency in buildings, the adoption of building performance standards alongside traditional codes is crucial. Unlike strict prescriptive codes, BPS emphasizes performance goals, offering flexibility for builders to achieve energy efficiency targets, fostering innovation and adaptation to diverse contexts. Notable cities like Tokyo, Boulder, Washington, D.C., and New York City have successfully implemented BPS. Key components of a BPS policy would include the metrics for performance measurement, associated targets, and a compliance timeframe supported by enforcement mechanisms. An integrated policy package would also incorporate incentives for higher than minimum performance, capacity building, and awareness raising. With this, I would like to move on to the second high opportunity area that we have delved into in this report, which is transitioning to higher efficiency electric motors. Electric motors, I think all of us would agree, are the backbone of the industry, consuming a significant portion of global electricity, and this underscores a potential for substantial energy savings and environmental benefits through the adoption of high-efficiency motors, particularly medium-sized induction motors, which are widely used across all industries. Our deep dive into the evolution of motor MEPS, or minimum energy performance standards, in the G20 highlights a positive trend towards increasingly stringent efficiency classification. And here I would like to sort of highlight two examples. The first, rather well known, is that of the European Union along with the United Kingdom and Turkey, that made 4 transitions to reach the current MEPS of IE4 for a class of motors in little more than just a decade. And along the same sort of timeline, China and Brazil transitioned to MEPS higher than IE2 for a large range of motors, despite the presence of many MSME motor manufacturers. I wish to highlight a few notable case studies from the G20, including the African Union, which was newly inducted into the G20 during India's presidency last year. South Korea's open platform for technology diffusion of IE4 industrial motors, and India's own National Motors Replacement Program led by ESL provide an insight into the national efforts to promote the production of high-efficiency motors. These case studies highlight the implementation of policies and incentive programs designed to support industries in transitioning to more efficient technologies. In another example, Egypt and Ghana have been forerunners among the African Union. Egypt successfully implemented IE3 MEPS, and Ghana mandated MEPS at IE2 in 2022, which is commendable for a developing country implementing motor MEPS for the first time. Our recommendations, detailed out in the report, include policy actions focused on enhancing motor efficiency and promoting energy savings in motor systems. The first set of actions suggests implementing mandatory efficiency requirements for new motors, emphasizing system efficiency over motor efficiency, increasing the use of variable speed drives, and discouraging motor repair below 50 kilowatt. Policies should be developed using an integrated policy-making approach, as was done in Egypt, that considers the perspectives of all relevant ministries and departments, integrated laterally and vertically, and considers the value proposition for all actors across the supply chain. Additionally, demand creation strategies, such as sensitizing procurement officers about life cycle costs of efficient motors as opposed to just the first costs, and promoting government-led energy audit programs should be implemented. And finally, support for small motor manufacturers should be addressed, including their raw material sourcing challenges, making technology accessible, and fostering joint ventures with larger manufacturers. Our third high opportunity area is around the role of ESCOs in advancing global energy efficiency. We all know that ESCOs are an effective instrument to achieve the 2030 goal of doubling energy efficiency through a comprehensive approach involving both operations and capital. However, the current ESCO market represents only a small fraction of the total global energy efficiency investments. ESCO market dynamics vary globally, influenced by factors such as market size, growth, business models, and finance sources. The global ESCO market, valued at roughly $38 billion, is led by China, the US, and the EU. The strategic plan recommends G20 countries triple ESCO investments to $100 billion by 2030. And this would essentially mean encouraging high-performing G20 countries to maintain their momentum and urging those with lower performance to accelerate their ESCO investments. Successful case studies from Mexico, China, India, and the US provide insights into overcoming barriers to ESCO market growth through mechanisms such as insurance-based financing, catalytic funds, aggregating demand, and policy-supported energy efficiency programs. The report describes sector-wise recommendations based on AAA's analysis, vetted by national and international experts. Overall, achieving a thriving ESCO market encompasses creating demand, building trust, and improving financing capacities. This would essentially mean fostering market development. It's crucial to broaden ESCO perspectives, integrating both operational and capital expenditure mindsets, highlighting the non-energy benefits of energy efficiency, such as increased asset value and health improvements, strengthening project development capacities, and progressively stringent energy efficiency mandates and regulations. Financing should involve diverse sources, appropriate financing mechanism, and de-risking solutions like guarantee funds and insurance products to minimize risk and ensure credit availability. And building trust requires robust M&V protocols. Stakeholder consultations have indicated that the implementation of a dedicated M&V platform utilizing internationally recognized protocols such as the IPMVP can automate the validation of performance for both new and retrofit projects. This approach has the potential to enhance the speed, consistency, and transparency of ESCO projects, thereby significantly boosting the ESCO market. With this, I would like to once again welcome the luminaries on the panel to share their views on the implications of the doubling target on the energy efficiency landscape in India, what role the Global South, including India, can play in doubling global energy efficiency progress by 2030, and how the G20 can operationalize high-impact opportunity areas identified during India's G20 presidency. Thank you very much. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Akash, for that very nice presentation, I think, is summarizing the work that has been done under the guidance of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And this is in addition to the report that DG sir talked about in terms of a strategic plan for advancing energy efficiency across demand sectors by 2030. And this is our attempt to dive a little bit deeper and to continue to show, I think, India's leadership in the multilateral forums, in the G20 and COP forums, by positioning India as one of the countries that can actually contribute to the global debate on mainstreaming energy efficiency and scale up. So we are running a little late. So I am, and I know that AAA team, I think all the organizers and they have reminded me that we need to make up a little bit of time, so I'm going to request, I think, all the panelists to just be brief. What I am going to request that we were allocated about 45 minutes for the panel discussion, and then there is an audience poll using Mentimeter. So there are 3 questions that are going to get posed, and in real time, the audience is actually going to respond to these questions, and we can see the results, I think, how the audience is thinking. This is also, I think, a good way to engage and get inputs from the audience. And then, based on, I think, these questions, we can come back, depending on how much time we have and how long is the interventions, to the panelists for one final lightning round in terms of the final remarks that they want to do. So I would say that please limit your intervention to less than 5 minutes based on the questions that, the broad category or questions that I am posing to you, or if you think that there are some other important points that you want to make within the larger rubric that this panel is talking about. So I'm going to be a little sexist. We only have one women professional, I think, and Dr. Ritu Mathur has spent a lot of time working on the larger energy sector, on the climate change sector, and we have had some interactions with her in terms of how do you make energy efficiency an integral part of the projections, whether we are talking about energy projections, whether we are talking about climate projection. And she is into she is in Niti Aayog currently after spending decades at TERI. And I will start with a couple of things. One is that I am actually highlighting, and one is a little bit of a challenge that I will pose to you, Ritu, and then I would like to get your thought. So there is a quote like, "In God we trust, everyone else must bring data." I am sure that you have heard this quote. This is by Edwards Deming. And it also talks about, especially in today's context, where we are talking at metering data, we are looking at sensor data, we are looking at very high-tech, advanced AI-based analytical techniques. I think this becomes even more important. And then the second the quote is that all models are wrong, but some are useful. This is by statistician George Box. So, so I think with that context, I just want to come to you, and I think based on your experience and based on, I think, some of the remarks that you heard from Mr. Abhay Bakre, and what is the ambition of India in terms of like what kind of work that should be done, either in the terms of, I think, collecting data, analyzing data, incorporating that into national models. How do you see energy efficiency advancing, I think, within India, and what will be the lessons for some other countries where data is always inconsistent, incomplete, imperfect? So I think we would like to start with you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I think when we start talking about data, there is the whole chain of first needing to know what is happening, second, needing to track where we are going, and third, being able to look at comparison or being able to also tell others and increase awareness of what is happening. I think we heard that in the opening remarks as well by Mr. Bakre, that BE is already doing a lot in terms of putting the energy efficiency progress together. And I think that is very important. But being able to track or collate data at the ground level, there are enormous gaps still. And for people who've heard me before on speaking about where we need to do and what we need to do in going towards net zero, I think what I've been saying consistently is that we know the what's. We now need the hows. So again, when we are trying to talk about implementation on ground, in trying to ramp up the scale and the pace of what we are doing, we need to be able to measure what is happening, why it is happening, how other countries or other players are making it more possible or more likely to be picked up as a solution, and being able to then generate this awareness among all kinds of consumers, etc. So I think, again, digitalization and technology is helping us a lot because it gives us a way to be able to collate and make available this kind of data, and we must therefore use this opportunity to make our data systems better. That's one. The second comes to modeling and putting this into our projections. So again, while we've been looking at, trying to look at the what's and looking at the broad solutions, I think we know them. We know that energy efficiency is extremely important. We know that electricity is one of the ways to decarbonize and low carbon fuels, etc. But how much of what you do when, again, sort of can make a impact and be picked up for action only when we model it down in terms of more detail. What do you do with regard to buildings and when? What is your stock of buildings currently like, and where can the change come about? When it comes to industry, again, what are your potentials across subsectors, across clusters, across range of people? Because again, the challenges for different subsectors and for different players are different. So if we don't model these specifics more clearly, we are not going to get the answers more clearly. So I think the models again, and you mentioned this also, we need to have a systems thinking and a systems approach to start coming in rather than just a technology approach. That's the other change that we need in modeling. The last point that I would also make is we're talking about doubling energy efficiency. We've been doing a lot, and we've been doing a lot of things right, which is why we've made some progress. But we are talking about a very different level of scale up and acceleration. So we need to do something which is much, much larger. And here, I think we need to bring in systems thinking. We need to bring in more systemic changes. And we therefore need to look at bunching up things across sectors as well. So how do you implement things such that you bring together all stakeholders into the game, and you talk about larger systemic changes to tap those energy efficiencies and make much more large-scale changes is, I think, going to be the most important thing. So with that, I'll end for now.
Thank you, Ritu, for those insightful remarks. I especially liked the comment that you make that how does India start to move from maybe I think a domain or like a particular area thinking to a systems thinking. This is akin to, I think a lot of our initial efforts has been focused on product, I think, and product has been seen as an enabler for bringing in energy efficiency, whether we are talking LED, whether we are talking fans, whether we are talking ACs. A lot of, I think, that work, I think we will come when Vishal talks about that, because SNL is all about, I think. But we also need to understand that products will only take us so far. I think how do we start to actually talk about the systemic approach, the solution approach, which will bring, I think, all these things together. So thank you very much. We are fortunate to have Mr. Arijit Sen Gupta here, but Arijit has already alerted me that he needs to leave around 12:10, 12:15 because he has an appointment in another ministry. So Arijit ji, I think you have been an integral part of Bureau of Energy Efficiency for the longest periods of time. You played a very, very important role, I think, in the G20 presidency journey. I think in talking to IEA and Clean Energy Ministerial and I think other international organizations. With the expanding remit of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which includes now, I think we are looking at sustainability, we are looking at green hydrogen, we are looking at carbon markets. So this is music to our ears because I think it looks like the importance of energy efficiency, I think, is being recognized, and it is also getting expanded how this is going to link with some of the broader parameters. How do you see in terms of the next phase of, I think, India's engagement and India's leadership, I think, in these multilateral forums, something that Mr. Abhay Bakreji also talked about. And what is your sort of like, what is BE's vision, your vision in terms of what BE would like to do, and what is the challenge that you want to throw to this community, I think, that is sitting in front of us, so that I think we can all support you in BE's ambition and in its leadership role.
Thank you, Satish ji, Saurabh Kumar sir, and other eminent panelists. So, of course, as you correctly mentioned, Satish ji, that the Energy Conservation Act, which was amended for the second time in 2022 during the winter session of the Parliament. So, the 3-4 major things that have been that has come out. Of course, number one is now that we are our Energy Conservation Building Code will now move from, or not only from energy conservation, but towards sustainability as well. So we are adding that sustainability part also as part of the Energy Conservation Building Code, which will be shortly kind of renamed as Energy Sustainability and Conservation Building Code. The second major amendment or the major lever that happened based on the amendment was the establishment of the carbon market, the Indian carbon market, and as all of you are aware that now the carbon market notification has already come out, and as Bureau of Energy Efficiency under the aegis of Ministry of Power and Ministry of Environment and Forest, we are now trying to assign targets to the individual units of the sectors. So to begin with, again, as we have done in case of our Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme, we are concentrating more on the larger industries, and then gradually we will move towards the other categories of industries as well. And if I talk about the carbon market, then in the Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme, we have this instrument called known as the ESCerts, the Energy Saving Certificates, which was basically to incentivize the performance of the industries on energy efficiency part. We also have the RPO obligation, the renewable purchase obligations, wherein the industries were kind of incentivized for the renewable energy part. Now, carbon market actually talks of all kind of consolidating all the various certificates that are already existing in terms of renewable energy, in terms of energy efficiency, and beyond that also. So now we are not only talking about energy-related emissions, which majorly contribute towards energy efficiency and renewable energy targets or certificates, but we are also talking about non-energy related emissions, and not only CO2 emissions, but other emissions as well, like methane or SF6 or N2O like that. So that again, this is something which in the next 3-4 years going to get more traction. So right now we are launching or we are going ahead with the Indian carbon market, but very soon it will be kind of made in such a manner that it can compete with the global carbon market as well, as specifically the EU ETS trading scheme that we have globally. The second or the third mandate, I would say the large mandate that was given to us was in the other hydrogen front. And if you look at the amendment to the Act, then we have been mandated now to come up with minimum green hydrogen consumption obligations. And when we talk about green hydrogen, of course, there is a mission, green hydrogen mission, which has been launched by the Honorable Prime Minister a couple of years back. And of course, green hydrogen as a subject is led by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. But Bureau of Energy Efficiency has been tasked with coming up with the green hydrogen consumption obligations. And if we look at the, again, the larger industrial sectors, then refinery and fertilizer are those sectors which currently uses a lot of hydrogen in already in their processes. So we are trying to see if we can convert those hydrogen which are already being used in these sectors and assign some targets to them so that they can convert it to green hydrogen, which can ultimately will also kind of be in line with our target under the green hydrogen mission, wherein we are aiming to produce 5 million metric ton of green hydrogen by 2030. So our role is mostly on the demand side or the use side of it. So these are the three, I would say, major things that we have been able to achieve, or we have been mandated as per the amendment of the Energy Conservation Act. And of course, we are glad that we have a large community here today. And of course, your help and your support will be very much required to kind of achieve the mandate or the goal that has been set by the government to the Bureau as per the amendment of the Act. Lastly, I would also like to say that when we are talking about doubling the energy efficiency, just few words on those things, because as Satishji mentioned, we were actively involved in the G20 negotiation process for the entire last year. So what we saw was that, of course, as DG sir mentioned, this was probably the first time where G20 led the way in many topics. Because whatever we had, whatever outcome we could have as part of our G20 presidency, some of those were taken to the COP. If you look at previous years, it always used to be the other way around. It was the COP which kind of led, and then G20 used to follow from those negotiations. But this was particularly on the doubling the energy efficiency and tripling of the renewable energy targets. We had a pledge that was later on signed at the COP as well. So when we talk about doubling the energy efficiency improvement, which is of course again, one of the goals of the SDG 7. And as per the IEA's Energy Efficiency Market Report 2022, if we are to double the global energy efficiency requirement, then there are two important things need to happen. We need to increase our investment by 3 times, from presently around 300 billion US dollar to 840 billion US dollars. And secondly, we need to double our energy intensity improvement. Now, when I talk about energy intensity improvement, it is basically the energy that is used to earn 1 unit of GDP. And if we look at the India's figures and the global average figures, then India is already slightly better than the global average. So globally, the figures are around 5.1 megajoules per US dollar PPP 2015 level. India is somewhere around 4.8, 4.9. So if we look at the energy intensity improvement rate, so we are somewhere around 2.4%, whereas the global average is around 1.8% for the period 2011 to 2020. So that's where you are. So we are already ahead of the global average, and being a developing economy, we have more scope for us to kind of double our, it's much more, we can lead the way to double the global efficiency levels. And in this regard, as DG sir was also mentioning, that normally what happens, whenever many things happen in one G20 presidency, those things get lost. But we have been mandated by the government, by the G20 Sherpa, that we need to take forward the outcomes that we could achieve during our presidency. Particularly on the doubling the global energy efficiency, we have been asked to prepare a roadmap. So we are now in talk with other neighboring countries and also with some of the developing African countries to lead the global kind of discourse in this regard. We are also kind of at the national level, we are coming up with new policies. Of course, the Energy Conservation Amendment Act will be a huge enabler. And at the state level also, maybe in some of the sessions we'll be discussing about the State Energy Efficiency Index. So that is also going to enable the states to come up and see how they are faring as far as energy efficiency is concerned and improving the rate of energy efficiency. So these are the few things that I wanted to highlight, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our views. Over to you, Satish.
So thanks, Arijit ji. I know you have to go. I have just a very quick follow-up question. You talked about, I think, expanding the remit and some of the work that Bureau of Energy Efficiency is doing. I know I think many stakeholders are also wondering, for instance, when we are saying that ECBC will be expanded to ECSBC, and we are still struggling to implement ECBC, and now we are saying that there is a sustainability, I think, and embodied carbon and these things that are going to come in. So I think, and again, similarly, when we are talking about carbon markets, there are lots of instances of gaming, and how do you actually put in like a very, very strong system of checks and balances that I think encourages, I think, the proper players, but also de-risks, I think, the system from some of the rogue, I think, elements that actually come into the market. And even for green hydrogen, we have like an expert sitting here, but I think a lot of, like, there is a green mission. So all these are fairly challenging, I think, assignments that BE is owning up. How do you see, I think, this panning out? Because, each of these initiatives are in itself massive initiatives, and these are sometimes new initiatives for BE as well. So what do you think, BE has to do, and what is again sort of like the expectation from the ecosystem in terms of helping BE on some of these things?
So thank you for posing this question. I think if you look at all the BE schemes, how BE has kind of grown, it has always been through extensive stakeholders consultation, stakeholder discussion, and active engagement of the community as a whole. Be it the standards and labeling program, be it our energy conservation building code, or the industrial energy efficiency program PAD, we have always been privileged that we have got a very good community which has been supporting us in all our endeavors. And unless and until we get the support from the community, the stakeholders at large, it will be very difficult for the government to kind of push any of these initiatives. You mentioned about the ECSBC. Of course, Energy Conservation Building Code has now been adopted by 476 ULBs in the country. And we have more than 3,000 buildings which have got the certificate of ECSBC. So yes, in a country where there are, say, around 4,000 to 5,000 ULBs, 476 might look a very small number, but we are able to kind of gain ground on that. And of course, the Standards and Labeling Program and the PAT program, the success for each of these programs, they speak for themselves. So we hope that we'll be able to kind of get the continued support of the community and the stakeholder engagement, based on which I think all the schemes and the endeavors of BE has been successful. And of course, these 3 initiatives that we have been mentioning, the new initiatives or the new tasks which have been assigned to the Bureau, will again very much be dependent on the quality of data that we get, the kind of monitoring and verification protocols that we put in place. So all these things will play a crucial role, apart from and support of the community as a whole.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Arijit ji, for staying with us, and I think sharing your comments and insights into this. We also, I think, let me just shift gears a little bit, and let me go to Venkat Garimella. Venkat, you are, I think, not only AEEE chair, but you also have a senior leadership position at Schneider Electric India. And many of the discussions that you have heard about technology, you have heard about digitalization. Ritu talked about, I think, these 2 pieces. And I think in the presentation you also saw that, I think we are talking about motor efficiency. We are talking, Mr. Abhay Bakreji talked about, I think, how do you actually make the transport sector more energy efficient. So I think technology, I think the role is pervasive. We all know that. And Schneider Electric itself as a company is a leader in sustainability. So how do you see the role of private sector kind of aligning with this doubling the rate of energy efficiency? And A, I think in terms of like, what do you think about this ambition? And B, how do you think Schneider Electric is actually going to gear up to support this kind of ambition?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Satish, for this question. I feel really privileged to be part of this panel. I think India is definitely in a very, very unique position. Why I say that? India is going to be a place where we're going to see the use case of something what I call as electricity 4.2. We all have heard about industry 4.2, etc. But what is this electricity 4.2? And how is that going to enable efficiency, adoption of technology, and make our ecosystem more decarbonized? Electricity 4.0 is nothing but an equation of accelerated electrification with higher mix of renewable and digital technology adoption for unlocking efficiencies. Electricity plus digitization is equal to electricity 4.0, and perhaps the best bet for making our ecosystems more sustainable. So this is what we at Schneider believe, and why I say India is at a sweet spot to play out electricity 4.0. Number one, lot of India is going to get built. We have no doubts about how our GDP is going to move from, let's say, to 4 trillion, to 5 trillion, to 7 trillion. Lot of India is going to get built. 2/3 of the building that will exist by 2030 are yet to be built. We are going to add close to 700 to 900 square meters of building space, both commercial and residential. Our airport footprint is going to significantly improve. A lot of other transport infrastructure is going to be built. So India has this unique advantage of building itself by leveraging the latest 21st century technology in the energy space, which was not easily available when, let's say, the Western economies became developed. So that's the sweet spot for India. And you're going to see a lot of electrification. You know, India is by far the third largest consumer of electricity, close to about, I don't know, 1,700 billion units per annum. But still we are 1/3 of the world average. So a lot of electrification is going to come our way. So this is one part of my equation. The other part, which Dr. Ritu did call out, is about digitization. India otherwise also is one of the world's largest data market. Whichever sector digitalization has happened, that has created significant impact in India and has of possibly the highest scale anywhere in the world, whether it is fintech, digital payments, telecom, even in entertainment. So digitalization has really created big contribution, impact, and transformation. I believe digitization in the energy sector, especially on the demand side, is going to have similar potential and opportunities. It has already started, coming from a company, Schneider Electric, which is actually in the business of providing digital solutions and technology for enabling efficiency and sustainability. We are very, very convinced that India will be one of the largest energy tech digitalization energy ecosystem, right? And the use cases are plenty, right from, let's say, IT, OT convergence to all the way to energy and processes, having a systemic approach from design, build, operate, maintain, leveraging AI, ML, big data, also having the capability of creating energy twins, carbon twins, process twins. I think these are all the avenues of digital tech in the energy space. And India is certainly going to be setting a very, very big example. So just to coming back to my equation, electrification accelerated, digital tech adoption is going to be really, really one of the big, let's say, examples in India for the world. And for us in India, the journey of Viksit Bharat is going to pass through the road of energy efficiency and energy transition on the bridges of tech adoption. So this is what I feel is going to come our way. And as Schneider Electric, we are super excited. I joined Schneider 20 years back, and we were just about 500 employees. As we speak today, we are about 38,000 employees. Soon we'll be a 50,000 employee company. And our business of providing digital tech for efficiency and sustainability has grown 30 times in last 60 years. So it is all happening in India. We have created Center of Excellence for AI, ML, digital technology, working on not just the India use cases, but also in the other economies. So that's, I think, is what I feel India is going to contribute, and I feel the best is sure to come, and we are all super excited to make this happen. And I like what Dr. Ritu said. It's all about how, and India will really be the template for the global South in deploying the sustainable development model. So this is what I'm truly convinced about. So hope, Satish, I answered you, and we'll be happy to have more conversations ahead.
Thanks, Venkat. In fact, as you were saying, I was reminded that one of the, I think, really great examples is the digital public infrastructure. I think where India has taken the leadership and it has shown the world, and many other countries are starting to look for, I think, how do you create that kind of infrastructure. If we can think about, I think, doing something similar for our sustainability, for our decarbonization, I think, infrastructure, and how do we actually build a decarbonized economy, then, and India looks like we are very well positioned to do that. So thanks, Venkat, for those comments. I'm turning to Anish Dey. I think we are privileged to have Anish, an expert, and Anish is KPMG's global head for energy, natural resources, and chemicals, and he is part of the KPMG global team on climate change and decarbonization. And And Anish invited me for their Enrich Labs session, where I think if we discuss about innovation and we discuss about financing and I think the need for talent and all those kind of things. And it was a very interesting experience because it was a much broader event. But I think Anish's thing was that we really want to bring the demand side much more central to this whole discussion that is happening about energy transition. So Anish, I think you have been hearing about, I think, the discussions that are taking place, the rising ambition that India is showing, and having conducted something like Enrich Labs and having led up a practice that is focused broadly on energy, what do you see? I think what are some of the investment and financing imperatives that we need to bring in? I think in the energy efficiency sector, we are always envious of the renewable energy sector and others because we think that I think they get the glory. But we also understand that energy efficiency, without energy efficiency, you cannot decarbonize. So from your vantage point, what are the things that energy efficiency community need to be doing which will allow it to bridge the gap and make significant more contributions?
Thank you, and thank you, Satish, for having me here. Thank you, IEEE, for having me here. You know, I have been a supply sider more than the demand side, and that's not by choice. You know, it's happened simply because it's been so difficult to make a business on the demand side. Okay, whereas on the supply side, it's much, much easier to create a business, and being a person from business, that's finally what you do. Several reasons, I'll come to your question, but I think one thing to congratulate Government of India is to get the whole issue of energy efficiency from beneath the radar to above the radar for the world. And it's so necessary because, you know, the global economy will grow 2x in the next 30 years, but it has to do at the same level of energy in that sense, not emissions, energy actually, if we have to do it. So it's not about creating more assets on the supply side, but actually driving energy efficiency really hard so that we don't have the net stock of assets going up any further, in effect. And that's a hard task, so it's a hard ambition to have. Now, the question is, how do we achieve that ambition? How do we raise the bar? How do we make that happen? Now, one of the first things which we realized, and you've been telling us some wonderful quotes since the morning, I always go back to what Dr. Peter Drucker said, that what gets measured gets done. Okay, and unfortunately, I felt that in energy efficiency, we have never had a tangible measure. In energy supply, you know, you had very tangible measures. You know, how many million tons of refineries being set up, how many megawatts of power capacity being set up, and that used to be tracked. Those numbers used to be missed, and people used to feel ashamed about it. There's no shame in missing energy efficiency targets, and I think somewhere we have to raise either the attractiveness, make it sexy, so to speak, or raise the shame, you know, make it risky to miss energy efficiency, and somewhere we need a much simpler metric at the aggregate level. It could be megawatts itself, megawatts avoided, which is tracked, measured, and maybe Ritu and the Niti Aayog can think about that, because without that, the issue doesn't necessarily get the attention. Now, whose attention do you need? I think we are talking of ESCOs, we are talking of various other technologies. We need attention of two communities which are very, very important. First is that we need the attention of the financiers. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But more importantly, equally importantly, we need attention of the supply siders. So the people who were supplying energy now really want to be a part of the demand side if they can be. And unfortunately, it's very hard business for them to be doing the same way the business on the demand side. So I think it will be a challenge for BEE and others to make that market, which is going to scale, attractive for investments. Investors could be strategic investors, you know, supply side investors who have been done that. They want to make a business on the demand side. How do we make this field ready for them? Unfortunately, what's happened is that this is entirely fragmented. The demand side situation is entirely fragmented, bad rates, you know, which is why we can't make a business of it. And similarly, various kinds of challenges. It doesn't lend itself to the aggregation capabilities. Somewhere we need to think very differently about business models which we are going to promote as a country or as a world, rather than these individual task-oriented businesses, how do we create a much more systemic business so that it becomes attractive? When you do that, that will bring us to the next category, which is financiers. Now, how does this whole cycle work? In today's world, especially in the world of startups, you start with an incubator, you have angel funding, you have VCs coming in, you have PEs coming in, you have lenders coming in, and then that sequence more or less, and then you have the public markets coming in. I think we need to have a full cycle view of these things to say that how does something, okay, as a business, not as a technology, go from the incubator to getting the public markets, attention of the public markets. If only we do that, if we have that view, then we are going to get the attention to which the business needs. So I think while a lot of good work has been done, it's still the underlying realities of this business haven't yet changed. And we need to fundamentally rethink the underlying realities of this business to make sure that it is attractive for technology providers, for investors, for lenders, for also the large organizations who have the money and whom we do need on the demand side to make this change happen.
So thanks, Anish. I think really indeed words of wisdom there. And I would say that I think through the forum of, FEED, what we are trying to do is to establish these linkages, some of the things that you pointed out between supply and demand side, I think between energy efficiency and renewables, between sort of technologists and financing community, and the cycle that you talked about. I was just smiling on your comment of Peter Drucker, because that's like one of the famous things, and I know that Saurabh is sitting in the audience. He must be, I think, chomping at the bit in terms of hearing your remarks, but I'm going to save best for the last, and I'm going to come to him, I think, after Vishal, and Vishal, of course, heads the CLASP operation in India. And also, I think all of us know that standards and labeling program, I think it's close to 2 decades old, probably a little longer, and it is one of the most successful programs of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. I think even in the report you saw, Vishal, I think there is a lot of focus on motor efficiency. I think we know that India can do better, I think, in terms of motor energy efficiency, but sometimes there are political economy issues and other things. So I think what, in your opinion, how is the entire landscape of standards and labeling evolving? We are fortunate to be working with you on some more of the solution-oriented, like in cold chain, which is not like a traditional standards and labeling area of focus. But what is going in your head? I think what's CLASP view, what is your view in terms of how to strengthen the energy efficiency argument further through the standards and labeling focus and the enlargement of that ecosystem?
Thank you, Satish. Great question. Good morning, everybody. I want to try to respond to your question in the theme of this session, which is around global insights, local implications, and then the presentation that Akash also gave, where he sort of asked the question, how can India lead on this theme? And through this session, I do want to make a call for India to lead a global collaborative movement on energy efficiency. And through the vantage point of appliances, which I'll talk about shortly. As far as I can see, other than having Shah Rukh Khan sing and dance to a song on energy efficiency, the soft power of energy efficiency is totally ready to be harvested. With the G20 statement on energy efficiency and the subsequent reiteration of that in the COP Global Stoptake Agreement, I think the song has been written. And whatever we might, differing views we might have, I think one view is clear. India is probably the best positioned in terms of orchestrated dance. And so clearly there is a role for India to lead in this segment, and I certainly would like to issue that call to try to lead a movement on energy efficiency with participation from not just the global south, but other international players as well. And what do I mean by that the soft power of energy efficiency is ready to be harvested? And, taking the cue from motors, which is obviously features prominently in the strategy that as Akash has presented earlier as well in terms of how we double it. If we look at appliances, the analysis that CLASP has put together suggests that energy use from appliances and products are accounting for 40% of global emissions, CO2 emissions. And that's quite a sizable number. If we just adopt some of the best efficiency there is today and some of the policies that are in place, in terms of IEA's net zero energy pathways, will miss that target by 9 gigatons by 2050 if we stay at today's level. So there's clearly work to be done. But as we know in some of these products and motors in specific as well, one of the products that we've listed out, it's technically feasible, it's commercially viable, it's beneficial to consumers, it leads to economic growth, it can help enable access. So it's just ready to be harvested. The way that CLASP and others are approaching it is to try to figure out how can we embed this in policies. Satish mentioned standards and labeling. That's one way of trying to put in a minimum energy performance standards that enables these products to adopt it. But as we are trying to enhance energy efficiency of products and appliances through efficiency policies, we're discovering that there is also a set of challenges we have to address, looking at it from a political economy side as well. The first is, even though the technology is viable, it's technically feasible, we have to make the case that it is accessible from a production point of view, from a supply diversification point of view, from a supply vulnerability point of view. We've got to be able to make that case more convincing. Second is to try to make the case that it is commercially viable for consumers. That is, it suddenly doesn't make access difficult for certain types of consumers. And so we've got to be able to make that case. And then we've also be able to make the case that the whole ecosystem will be geared to be able to do it. So when we look at policies, we're also looking at not just the policy mechanism itself, but the prerequisites that we need for policy, the making of the policy, and then the effectiveness of that policy, which is not just about compliance, formal compliance mechanisms, but also to be able to use those policies to continue to promote technical innovation. So you're seeing a slow growth, you're seeing a growth in the efficiency levels as well. I think those are some of the elements that we need to bring together. But as you can see from this, it really requires a widespread collaboration, not just technical experts sort of driving policy, but also for markets to work, for consumers, enhance access to consumers, and for all of these segments to come together. Obviously government has to lead. There is also a tremendous amount of opportunity for global collaboration, and this is where we think that India, with its strong decades of experience in this segment, can certainly play a role, and is beginning to play a role. And we'd certainly continue to encourage that a bit more. Thank you.
Thanks, Bishal. When you said the orchestrated dance, then I was conjuring up image of Farah Khan and Shah Rukh Khan and Malaika Arora, I think, doing a dance, huh? Yeah, and Vishal with in that, I think, group. So I think that's, and we do need to make energy efficiency sexy. I think we all realize that. I think what's the magic or what's the secret sauce for doing that. So, but I think one thing that I'm going to take away from this, and I think what Mr. Bakre was saying in the morning session, I think the difference sometimes between the supply side and the demand side is that you can almost touch and feel, I think, the impact that appliances actually make into your life. They enhance thermal comfort. You can be cooler in a very, very hot, on a very, very hot day. You can have like a very, I think, a nice oven where you can cook, I think, a healthy food and other things. And all these are being done by harnessing electricity, but through the appliances. So it really touches, or like a solar-powered cook stove, I think, or an LED lamp. So it's like there are so many examples where people's lives are getting touched by, I think, all these things. And that's the advantage of energy efficiency and the appliances and everything. And we really need to harness that to make it, I think, more real and get more attention. I'm going to come to Saurabh-ji. I have known Saurabh-ji for close to 17, 18 years. I think when I came back to India, Saurabh-ji started his journey at Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And Saurabh-ji has been kind of like the poster child of energy efficiency in India and globally. I think it's not just that in India. I would say that for a certain period of time, I was thinking that I need to change my career. I think energy efficiency is just dead and buried, and I think we will just keep talking about this thing on the margin. But I think the kind of work that Saurabh-ji did, I think he had Energy Efficiency Services Limited. And I think what is really inspiring is the kind of risks that I think Saurabh-ji took while he was at ESL, at the helm. Of course, he has moved on. He is leading a philanthropic organization which is enhancing sort of like his worldview of things, where I think removal of poverty and other things I think is becoming more mainstream there. So I don't need to pose any question to you. I think there are just so many things that has been discussed. So I wanted to give you sort of like the floor because we have talked about ESCOs, we have talked about financing and investment, we have talked about measurement and verification, we have talked about technology. All of these things, you have been there, done that. So I think in terms of, I think in the context of this discussion that we are having, I think what would you like to share, Saurabh-ji, and what would be your some advice and guidance, I think, for all of us and for this audience that is sitting in the room?
First of all, Satish-ji, thank you for your very kind words. Let me remind the audience, I was a rookie when I met Satish-ji, and a lot of things that I've learned over the years is thanks to people like him. Thanks also for inviting me here. So let me start with saying that India has a chance between now and 2030 to not just double, actually triple energy efficiency, quite honestly, and it's real. And I'll say this in by doing three things. This can be done. As we all know, we have the demand side management regulations since 2010, which were approved by the FOR, and most states have already passed it. None of the states have actually acted on it. In fact, just before the session, I was discussing with DGB that we need to have a national DSM policy with a national target in mind, basically to, which can then get down to the state level. And just to give you a sense, if we have, let's say a DSM levy of 1 or 2 paisa per unit, which is a very small amount of money, you raise 2,000 crores every single year for basically doing incentives or any other thing in which you want to participate and increase energy efficiency in this country. So it's very doable. It has been done in the past. And just to let you know, we have supported Odisha Discoms, and they've got a regulatory approval to replace 2.5 million BLDC fans in the state, with a 50% subsidy coming from a similar exercise. So it is real. It is not anything which, and it has a scope of massive private investments, both in the manufacturing side. It could also develop into an ESCO-based activity. So that's number one. Number two, the Honorable Prime Minister has just announced perhaps the world's largest rooftop scheme. I have never heard about a 10 million household. Now this is the point in time where agencies like Bureau of Energy Efficiency need to join this whole program. Because as Rituji was saying, and as Venkat rightly mentioned, this is all digital. This whole implementation is going to be digital. You are targeting households with 5 kilowatt or less loads. And this is the time really to get, quote unquote, get into the house and replace equipment. And so that's the second element. And the third one, again, both people mentioned, is digitization. We have a 100 million smart meter rollout which is going on. It should happen over the next 3 to 4 years across various discoms. Now, given the fact that when you have the consumers on a two-way communication with the discom, it is very easy to nudge them, and I'm now widening the consumers beyond households to commercial, to industrial, SMEs. It is very easy then to nudge them towards energy efficiency. For instance, in many countries in Europe, where just the information of your peer, how much energy consumption and what is the energy bill your peers are having vis-a-vis you, has actually led to a massive movement towards energy efficient equipments, processes. So I think the country has the chance to tripling its energy efficiency. And just in terms of numbers, this country has about 450 million fans, which are already 3 or 4 years old. Potentially, if you replace all of them with BLDC, you could save 30 gigawatts of electricity in the next 4 to 5 years. So I'm just giving an example, not to talk about cooling and many other things that are coming. So Satishji, once again, I think India can show the way. India can show the way by it has shown the way in the past. And just to also mention to you and the audience that we are setting up a new entity within GIAP, and also we are in discussions with a couple of other philanthropies, because we feel that what India has done can be replicated elsewhere. For example, GIAP is present in about 8 other countries. We want to take India's best practices, both in energy efficiency and clean energy, and see how we can replicate this elsewhere. And just to report to you, Satishji, that our electric bus program has caught the attention of at least 3 countries like Nigeria, Indonesia, and Brazil. They want GIAP to help them replicate the electric bus program in those locations. So I think it's all very real, and we can be the leaders in the world as far as energy efficiency is concerned.
No, thank you. Thank you, Saurabhji. And I completely echo and endorse. I think even I am visiting some of the international conferences where many of the global south countries that you are mentioning who are present, what we see that there are so many people from Ghana and from Nigeria and from Indonesia and Vietnam and others who are coming and saying that I think we would want to follow the lead of India, I think, on many of these things, whether it's bulk procurement, whether it's PAT, whether it's, I think, some of the building energy efficiency work. And I think they relate a little better to, I think, India rather than, say, Europe or US, because they think that's like so out of reach, and some of those lessons are so difficult to actually replicate in their countries. So clearly, I think there is an opportunity, and I think the G20 work that I think Indian government has done has sort of catapulted, I think, the Indian sort of like bureaucracy and I think the entire ecosystem to that level. So it's an exciting time. What I'm going to do, I'm just, maybe I think I'll take like 2 or 3 questions before we get into the Mentimeter part. And because we have such an illustrious I think a panel that I would like the audience to also, we are running behind time, but I thought that if we can actually get like maybe 3 questions, please introduce, please do not comment or like give your observations, please ask your question. If you want to direct it to a particular speaker, do that, and please be very brief and sharp, I think, with your question. I'll cut you off, I think, if you start rambling. Thank you very much. Yeah. Anybody? Wow. Maybe I threatened them too much. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Please. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is H. Wadhwa from Consumer Voice, based in New Delhi. My question is on the National Motor Replacement Program being launched by the ESL. Is it taking care about the quality control order also launched by the DPIIT as well as the BIS? Thank you.
do not have a ESL person here, but was it started under your leadership, Saurabhji? So
Yeah,
if
it
you,
did.
yeah,
It did, and
Yeah.
yes, it did take care of all statutory requirements. I don't know about the present one, but this motor replacement program has been going on for a while. I think 2017-18. So it does take care of all statutory requirements.
I don't know, Akash or Bhaskar, I mean, if you have any more recent information, but I think maybe that could be a sidebar conversation. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
Myself, Kandarp Mistry from Green Energy Transition Research Institute of GUNL, DISCOMs. Sir, my question related to BEE. BEE has initiated very commendable initiatives in couple of years, starting from PAT schemes and standards labeling programs, star rating of appliances, including solar panels and modules, and energy efficient appliances. But sir, what we from DISCOMs see, this BEE approach is from the central approach, but it same way it requires to approach at the state levels. So why not state level BEE or kind of policy level initiative at state level action plans? Because there is some gap between central and state level initiatives. Also, there is a state energy efficiency action plans all states have to prepare. So that also align with the policy level approach at the central approach. So if such kind of state BEE is creating in the states, and all the central initiatives align with the state level initiatives and budget plan, will be very much helpful. Thank you.
Maybe I'll just very quickly respond, because I think the AEEE addresses one aspect of it through our state energy efficiency index work, where we are looking, I think, how some of the government centralist schemes, I think, are getting implemented, but also some of the other state energy efficiency, its own initiatives, how are they? And I think we try to highlight some of the best practices, I think, in that. This is also getting done under the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, but I think AEEE is more actively involved there. And I do believe that, I think, the role that SDAs and the state DISCOMs, I think they need to play. I think if there is a little bit of coming together, I think this could be, I think, further taken up. But maybe, Bishal, you want to come, because I think the question is also related to the appliances and standards and labeling.
Sure. Again, yeah, I can't speak for BEE on the overall approach, but one of the areas in which we've been providing technical assistance to BEE is to look at the standards and labeling program and how we can have the states implement that. So over the last year, there's a whole pretty extensive market surveillance, market compliance sort of framework that's been developed by BEE, that's been rolled out to the states. We're supporting BEE conduct several regional trainings. We've done like 2 of them. I think 3 more are in the works for different states. The idea is to get states to begin to start looking at compliance from an appliance point of view, and sort of by extension of that to look at market promotion activities for star-rated programs. There's already not a directive, but a guidance that's gone out from the ministry that encourages state procurement to go for at least 4-star and above. And there was a whole, cost analysis that was done to support that motivation. So I think that's one area of work where we're doing. I can't comment on all the others. I'm sure there might be, but that's one area looking at compliance, and from compliance of appliances, how we engage more in terms of market promotion. That's been done. It's very active, and I think it's supposed to pick up steam this year in 2020.
Thank you. Maybe one more question.
Hi.
Okay, I'll go this side. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a really insightful session. I'm Jiten from GE Gas Power, sir. So we are very much front runners, as you know, the world's 30% of the electricity production. So on the net zero also, and the clean fuel transitions, we are actively working in the hydrogen side. So my question to the think tank, maybe Rituji or Anish ji can help me out. I mean, as I'm a, the fossil fuel person, so I know it's a little different from the off track from today's subject, but what's the government's thought on the, specifically India is being fed with the 60% of electricity being generated by the fossil fuels. So, and the infrastructure is built for steel, petrochemicals, etc. later on. But what's the government thought now on the renewable side? We have been talking a lot, hydrogen, green hydrogen, etc. So, is it being changed immediately? And I mean, what's government's thoughts? And in fact, the natural gas is giving less footprint on the environment also, but the taxation part on the coal portion, I'm adding an additional question for that. So what's the thought for the on this? You know.
So I would say a very loaded question. I don't know, Anish, you want to quickly respond, and then you can probably take it offline also. Yeah.
So very quick response. I think we are not getting off fossil fuels anytime soon because we are a global growing economy, and given the growth ambitions, it's impossible to get off fossil fuels. So what we all have to look at is efficiency in use of fossil fuels. So be it for transport, where you can use hybrids, or you can get other technologies which can really get a lot more efficiency out of the same molecule. I think we have to look at that in every possible way. So you're not yet, I mean, of course, gas has a different history, but I'm saying in general, fossil fuels are not going to go away anywhere in the near term, which is the unfortunate reality, because if we had been able to, then the planet would have benefited. But since we can't, we have to look at efficiency in every possible way. And I think government is focused on that.
Thank you. So sorry, I think we are running short of time. I will encourage like anybody to get hold of the panelists. I think during. Okay, so maybe I think you're okay. So we'll take one more question and then yeah.
My question is regarding embodied carbon and the operational carbon as far as Indian buildings are concerned, and basically because a lot of this carbon is basically getting imported because of this concrete, cement, steel, etc. also, and that will be a lot more capital intensive in case if you're going for green hydrogen, green steel, etc. So which will increase the cost of all these assets and infrastructure. So how can we, basically go both ways, basically for scaling up, we have to reduce the cost also, so that, regarding so that these buildings are basically, when they are operational, basically do not have that sort of carbon footprint for that. So, and secondly, how do we basically also, at the same time, basically not just, reduce the cost of it, but also basically try to, scale it up through, through retrofitting, etc. All these and through because there are buildings which are basically a lot more carbon intensive because of their legacy also. So how can we basically reduce through embodied and operational carbon? Yeah. Thanks very much.
Rituji, you want to take a crack at this?
Yeah. Sure. Quite a complex question though, but I think again on that I would say India especially, and as Anish also mentioned, we do not have very easy choices. You have to do sort of everything both on the demand side as well as supply side. But again, what I mentioned in the morning, it's more about the hows. So hows and the whens. So it's also about phasing things. We can't completely decarbonize all our buildings immediately. But again, moving through a phased approach in terms of at least setting standards right now, which are more holistic, then also looking at materials and alternative products, and looking at the embodied carbon side of things probably comes a little later. So it's about phasing in and sort of rolling out towards a net zero. But India will have to play with all kinds of options, both on the supply and demand side, as we go along. It can't be a do everything tomorrow kind of solution. So I think it's about policies, it's about incentives, it's about awareness. It's a mixed bag of which we have to brew slowly over time to make best use of the technologies and the options as we have them and as they become commercially viable. So it's also about being able to scale up opportunities. And again, I think this was also mentioned during the panel discussion, looking at success stories, looking at best choices and alternatives, what has happened in other countries, and tapping the success stories as they evolve would again be part of the solution. So that's where I think we need to plan our phased approach and look at how we tackle embodied carbon without giving up on growth of our infrastructure and buildings and built up environment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ritu. We want to do the Mentimeter.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yes. Thank you so much for the insightful discussion. I'm sure the speakers would be happy to take any questions in the networking break or the lunch that follows. Since we want this to be more interactive, now we would like to get the audience's view on a few questions. So we're going to have an audience poll on the screen. Can we have it? I would request everybody to use their phones and scan the QR. Please scan the QR code. In case you're not able to scan the QR code, you can go to the website menti.com and use the code 76631389. The code is 76631389. The website is menti.com and the code you can use is 76631389. Here's the first question. Which among the following do you think will be the most impacted by doubling energy efficiency in India? Job creation, reducing energy costs, attractive investment opportunities, ensuring energy security, reducing GHG emissions. Okay, we will move on to the next question. Going forward, what should be the highest focus of international cooperation to implement the doubling target? Investment scale-up, exchange of policy and technology best practices, energy consumption data collection and analysis methodologies, or training and capacity building? I hope there are no technical issues with anybody trying to answer these questions. I will go back and show you the code once again. if anybody's still trying to log in.
There, code is there. It's above here.
The code is 76631389. I'll move on to the next question. Which among the following would be your top recommendations to mainstream environmentally conscious lifestyles and people-led actions? This is a question where you're supposed to rank in priority order. The two options seem to be very close. Now that we have our audience's view, I will go back so the speakers can just discuss what the audience's view looks like. Is this kind of what you would expect the answers to be like?
Satish, I think this really shows the evolving landscape of energy efficiency. You know, as I was saying in the morning, energy efficiency for last so many years was in its teens. In 2023, I see energy efficiency really achieving adulthood. And it started becoming attractive to everyone. Everyone started to engaging with energy efficiency and associating with energy efficiency. Why? Because not just about its ability to build energy resilience, reducing energy cost, improving energy access, but its contribution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions became more and more prominent. With every passing year, we are getting to let's say, the milestone of reducing emissions 43% by 2030, and maybe much more by 2050. With every passing year, the urgency of emission reduction really is getting prominent, and contribution of energy efficiency to do so or to contribute in this, I think, is what is getting established, and that's a good news. You know, we have much more reasons to really work on energy efficiency. So I see that reflection.
You moved on from the second question, but I think anyway, these are not either or answers, right? They're all relevant, viable, valid answers. But I think all three coming together is quite interesting, because that's what the audience feels, that all three are more or less at the same level of importance, which is investment scale up, policy exchanges, and energy consumption data. All of these three are super important, and I think if we can keep these three on the radar and frame the forward-looking initiatives of policy as well as AEEE, I think we won't go wrong.
Thanks.
I would add that I leave at least after this session a lot more optimistic than I did when I first came in. And the reason being that the answers were so close to each other, but it also means that this issue is very multidimensional, right? And we need proponents in each one. So if you strongly believe in one thing, I strongly believe in policy, but I think equally you need everybody to believe in, some other person to believe in investments, markets, etc., etc. And I think we need all of that collectively. And the fact that the numbers seem to be grouped together seems to indicate that there is enough critical mass in each of those responses, and we need all of those cylinders to fire.
I think again, the role of energy efficiency has clearly come out as being a very important player in the decarbonization. So we saw that in the first bit. And again, in terms of multiple options needing to play out, ranging from policy to awareness to data, I think again is clear from the inputs.
Thank you so much. I would now request Dr. Satish to present the speakers with a token of appreciation.
Let's come for a picture.
Can we please have a huge round of applause for the speakers? Now, I would like to take a moment to thank our platinum sponsors, Danfoss and Schneider Electric, gold sponsors, ABB and Carrier, silver sponsors, Eurovent and ITAM, and session sponsor, Tabreed. This unwavering support and commitment have played a pivotal role in making this event a reality. Thank you so much. For our next session, we have a fireside chat that will discuss opportunity meets planning, solutions for India. This session is not just a discussion, it is a call to action, bringing together influential voices to propel India's energy efficiency trajectory into an